Commander Ethan Graves stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring out at the endless stretch of stars. The deep hum of his ship, the Vanguard, vibrated beneath his boots as he held a small, glowing data chip between his fingers. The message had arrived only an hour ago, encrypted with the highest level of security. A royal summons from an alien empire. The Velari Dominion was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their technology was unmatched, their fleets vast, and their rulers mysterious. The humans had only recently begun to establish themselves among the stars, and relations with the Dominion were complicated. Ethan exhaled. Why would a princess of the Velari summon him, of all people? "Commander," a voice broke his thoughts. He turned to see his second-in-command, Lieutenant Maravos, watching him with a raised brow. She was one of the best officers he had served with, sharp, fearless, and always ready with a sarcastic remark. "You're really going?" she asked. "Do I have a choice?" Ethan pocketed the data chip. "A royal summons isn't something you ignore, especially not from the Velari." Still, Mara crossed her arms. "It's weird, isn't it? We barely have any diplomatic ties with them, and no one knows what the summons is about." Ethan agreed. It was weird. Humans had fought tooth and nail to earn a place in the galactic community, and the Velari had never shown much interest in them, except to keep them at a distance. And yet, Princess Illyra, the sole heir to the Velari throne, had requested him by name. He checked the coordinates. The message contained clearance codes and direct access to Valerian Prime, the Dominion's capital world. That alone was shocking. The Velari never allowed outsiders into their palace, let alone a human military officer. "Keep the ship on standby," Ethan told Mara. "If something feels off, I want the Vanguard ready to jump at a moment's notice." Mara gave a mock salute. "Understood, Commander. Try not to start an intergalactic war while you're there." Ethan smirked, but the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on his mind. Arrival on Valerian Prime. The Valerian Prime skyline stretched before him like a vision from another universe. Towering spires of crystal and metal gleamed under the twin suns, casting shimmering lights across the floating platforms that carried diplomats, nobles, and soldiers through the city. Ethan stood on the docking ramp of the Royal Landing Bay, watching as a group of tall, silver-armored Velari warriors approached him. Their faces were smooth, with intricate markings glowing faintly under their violet-hued skin. One of them stepped forward. "Commander Graves, welcome to Valerian Prime." Ethan gave a respectful nod. "I assume you know why I'm here." The warrior's expression remained unreadable. "Princess Illyra awaits you in the Grand Palace. Follow me." Without another word, Ethan was led through the city, the transport weaving through floating gardens and cascading waterfalls suspended in midair. The architecture was impossibly elegant, with glowing rooms carved into smooth ivory-colored stone. As the palace gates loomed ahead, Ethan felt something he hadn't expected: unease. He had fought on countless battlefields, faced enemies far deadlier than most could imagine. But this was different. This wasn't a battle where he could rely on instincts and training. This was diplomacy, and diplomacy was a battlefield of its own. The mysterious summons. The throne room was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The walls shimmered with living energy, shifting like waves on an ocean. At the center, on a raised platform, sat Princess Illyra. She was striking, not just in appearance, but in presence. Her violet skin bore faint, luminescent patterns that pulsed gently, like a rhythm only she understood. Her silver-white hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her golden eyes studied him with an intensity that made Ethan feel as though she could see into his very soul. He stopped at the base of the platform, waiting for her to speak. "You are different from what I expected," Illyra said at last, her voice smooth but firm. Ethan smirked slightly. "I'll take that as a compliment, Your Highness." She didn't return the smile. Instead, she stood and descended the steps, stopping only a few feet away from him. Do you know why you are here? Ethan's shoulders tensed. I was hoping you'd tell me. Alara held his gaze for a long moment before she finally spoke. The Valari Dominion is in great danger, she said. And you, Ethan Graves, are the only one who can save us. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Ethan had expected politics, maybe a negotiation. But this was something else entirely. His instincts screamed that he was now tangled in something far larger than himself. But one thing was certain. He needed to know why. And he needed to know now. Ethan Graves stood frozen, the princess's words echoing in his mind. You are the only one who can save us. Of all the things he had expected, this was not one of them. He studied Princess Alara carefully. Her golden eyes held no trace of deception, only a quiet intensity that made him uneasy. A leader of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy was asking him, a human, for help. He crossed his arms. You're going to have to explain, Your Highness, because right now, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Alara motioned for him to follow. Not here, she said, her voice low. There are too many ears in the palace. Ethan hesitated. This was dangerous territory. He was standing in the heart of the Valari Dominion, surrounded by their guards, nobles, and unseen threats. If this was a trap, he had no backup, no weapons, and no way out. But something in Alira's expression told him that this wasn't a game. With a quiet nod, he followed her. The hidden chamber. Alara led him through a series of corridors, past towering statues of Valari rulers and intricate murals depicting their empire's long history. Finally, they reached a set of massive doors, guarded by two silent warriors in ornate armor. At Alira's command, the doors opened, revealing the hidden chamber. Ethan stepped inside and immediately felt the air change. It was cooler here, and the walls pulsed faintly with golden energy. The room was filled with ancient texts, holographic projections, and strange artifacts. At the center of it all stood a glowing pedestal with a strange, rotating sphere floating above it. It pulsed in an eerie rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Alara gestured toward it. This is the truth the Valari have hidden for centuries. Ethan frowned. What truth? She took a deep breath. The war that nearly destroyed my people long ago. The war against the Exelfar. The name sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. He had heard whispers of them before, but very little was known. The Exelfar were supposed to be a long-extinct species, wiped out in a war that predated humanity's rise to the stars. Alara continued, We believed the Exelfar were gone, but we were wrong. They have returned, and they are preparing to wipe out the galaxy. Ethan's jaw tightened. That still doesn't explain why I am here. Alara's gaze darkened. Because their greatest weapon, the weapon that nearly destroyed us before, was meant for humanity. Ethan's breath caught. What? She waved a hand, activating the holograms. A map of the galaxy appeared, showing Earth, surrounded by shifting energy fields. Long ago, the Exelfar created a genetic weapon. Alara explained. It was designed to target and destroy a specific race. But before they could use it, the war turned against them, and they were forced to retreat. The weapon was never deployed. Ethan's pulse pounded. And you're saying that race was? Humans, Alara confirmed. The Exelfar saw humanity's potential, even before you had reached the stars. They feared what your kind might become. So they created something to erase you before you ever had the chance to rise. A cold silence filled the chamber. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. So let me get this straight. An ancient alien species wanted to wipe out humanity before we even became a threat. But they lost the war before they could use their weapon. Yes, Alara said. And now they're back, with the same weapon. Yes. Ethan exhaled sharply. That's a hell of a history lesson, Princess, but it still doesn't tell me why you need me. Alira's golden eyes locked onto his. Because the Exelfar's weapon was designed for ancient humans, she said, but humanity has changed. You evolved, adapted, grew stronger. And now, we believe that humans, your people, are the only ones immune to the weapon. Ethan's heart pounded. Alyra took a step closer. That means humanity is the only force in the galaxy that can fight them. That's why I summoned you. A dangerous alliance. Ethan let the weight of her words sink in. If what she was saying was true, then humanity was now the Excelfar's primary target. And if the Velaris wouldn't stop them, then Earth was in grave danger. He looked at Alyra. You want an alliance, don't you? She nodded. Yes. The Velari need your help. Ethan smirked dryly. Funny. A few years ago, your people barely acknowledged our existence, and now you're asking us to save you. Alyra didn't flinch. I understand the irony, Commander. But this is bigger than politics. If we do not stand together, we will all fall. Ethan glanced at the swirling hologram, showing the dark shape of the Selfar fleet moving through the stars. It was a risk, a huge risk. But deep down, he knew he couldn't ignore it. His people had fought their way into the galactic community, proving again and again that humans were survivors, fighters. They had been underestimated before. And now they had the chance to prove that humanity was more than just another species in the stars. They were warriors, and if the Excelfar wanted a fight, humanity would give them one. Ethan turned to Alyra. All right, Princess. You've got my attention. What's the plan? Alyra's expression hardened. First, we must survive the night. There are those in my court who do not want this alliance to happen. They will try to stop us. Ethan smirked. Let them try. Ethan Graves knew trouble when he saw it. And right now, trouble was staring him right in the face. Princess Alyra had just revealed a dangerous truth. The Excelfar had returned, and their ancient bioweapon was designed to wipe out humanity. The only reason Ethan was still standing was because humans had evolved beyond what the Excelfar had planned for. Now, the Velari Dominion needed his help. And that meant one thing. Not everyone would be happy about this alliance. Alyra had warned him that there were those in her court who would do anything to stop this agreement. She hadn't been wrong. Ethan and Alyra had barely stepped out of the hidden chamber when a group of Velari High Guards blocked their path. Their silver armor gleamed under the soft palace lights, and their weapons were drawn. At the front stood Lord Selvar, a high-ranking noble and a key advisor to the Dominion's ruling council. His violet skin bore the intricate markings of his ancient bloodline, and his golden eyes held nothing but cold calculation. You should not have involved him, Princess, Selvar said smoothly, his gaze flicking toward Ethan. This matter does not concern the humans. Ethan smirked. Funny. Considering that Excelfar literally built a weapon to destroy my species, I'd say it concerns me quite a bit. Selvar's expression didn't change, but his grip on his ornate staff tightened. You do not understand the balance of power in this galaxy, Commander. The Dominion has survived for centuries because we know when to negotiate and when to submit. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Submit. You're actually considering surrendering to the Excelfar. Alyra stepped forward. You would betray your own people, Selvar. This is not betrayal, Selvar said calmly. This is survival. Alyra's eyes burned with anger. And what happens when the Excelfar demand more? When they wipe out humanity and then turn on us? You think they will show mercy? Selvar exhaled, almost as if he were speaking to a child. The Excelfar do not seek destruction. They seek order. They see humanity as a threat to that order. If giving them what they want means preserving the Velari people, then so be it. Ethan let out a sharp laugh. Wow. I've seen a lot of cowards in my time, but you take the prize. Selvar's eyes darkened. You do not belong here, human, and you will not leave this palace alive. He raised his hand. The guards moved in, escaped from the palace. Ethan didn't wait for them to make the first move. He never did. The moment the guard stepped forward, he grabbed Alyra's wrist and pulled her back, twisting his body to dodge the first strike from a glowing energy blade. The Valari warriors were fast, but Ethan was faster. His military training kicked in. He grabbed a nearby ceremonial staff from the wall and blocked a strike aimed at his head. Sparks flew as the energy blade cut through the edge of the staff, but it gave him just enough time to kick his attacker back. Alara wasn't idle either. With a flick of her fingers, she activated a hidden device on her wrist. A pulse of energy blasted 3 guards back, giving them a temporary opening. "Follow me," she shouted, dashing through a side corridor. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted after her as alarms blared through the palace. The Valari nobles, startled by the sudden chaos, scrambled out of their way. Ethan and Alara weaved through the grand halls, dodging incoming guards and using every bit of cover they could find. But they were running out of time. As they turned a corner, a massive metal gate began to close ahead of them. Ethan pushed Alara forward. "Go!" She slid under just in time, but Ethan was a fraction of a second too slow. The gate slammed shut between them. Alara spun around, eyes wide. "Ethan." Ethan turned to see more guards closing in behind him. "No time," he shouted. "Get to the ship. I'll meet you there." Alara hesitated, then nodded. She knew she had to go. With a final look, she disappeared into the night. Ethan, now trapped, cracked his knuckles. "All right," he muttered. "Guess I'm doing this the hard way." The vanguard strikes back. Alara reached the palace's outer courtyard, breathing heavily. The city was on high alert, and patrols were sweeping the area. She needed to get to Ethan's ship, the Vanguard. She activated her communicator. "Mara, do you read me?" A burst of static, then a familiar voice. Loud and clear, "Princess," Mara Voss said. "Where's the commander?" "He's still inside," Alara said. "We need a distraction." Mara chuckled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Above the palace, the clouds suddenly split apart. The Vanguard, Ethan's sleek Terran warship, descended, its cannons glowing hot as it unleashed a series of warning shots toward the palace defenses. Explosions lit up the sky. Sirens wailed. The Valari forces were completely unprepared for an Earth warship attacking their capital. And in the chaos, Alara slipped away. Ethan's last stand. Or not. Back inside, Ethan had fought his way through at least a dozen guards. His knuckles were bruised, his breath ragged, but he was still standing. Then the reinforcements came. At least 20 more soldiers surrounded him, weapons raised. Selvar stepped forward, smirking. "You fought well, human, but it ends here." Ethan wiped blood from his lip and smirked back. "You sure about that?" Suddenly, the palace shook as the Vanguard's bombardment hit another defense tower. And in the moment of distraction, Ethan moved. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, fired 2 precise shots, and leaped onto a nearby balcony. From there, he sprinted toward the emergency exit, vaulting over obstacles as alarms blared around him. He was getting out, and when he did, he was going to make sure Selvar and his allies paid for this betrayal. Ethan Graves sprinted through the darkened corridors of the palace, his heart pounding. Behind him, alarms blared, and the sound of boots hammering against the polished floors echoed through the halls. The Valari High Guards were in pursuit, and they weren't holding back. Energy blasts zipped past him, scorching the walls. Ethan ducked behind a statue, took a deep breath, and then kept moving. He had no choice. Princess Alara had escaped. That was good. Now he had to reach the Vanguard before they locked down the entire city. Up ahead, he saw a massive window overlooking the outer courtyard. The palace's towering gates were closing, and guards were flooding the area. No way out through the main entrance. Ethan glanced at the window. It was reinforced, built to withstand an attack. But if he could find a way through it, he might have a chance. He tapped his wrist communicator. "Mara, I could use some backup right now." Static. Then Maravas's voice came through. "Hang tight, Commander. We're almost at your location. Just don't die before we get there." Ethan smirked. No promises. He looked around. A nearby energy grenade had been dropped by one of the fallen guards. Perfect. He grabbed it, pressed the activation switch, and hurled it at the window. The explosion rocked the room, and the reinforced glass shattered into 1,000 pieces. Without hesitation, Ethan sprinted forward and leaped through the opening. A desperate leap. The wind roared in his ears as Ethan plummeted toward the lower levels of the palace. He twisted his body, angling himself toward a rooftop below. He hit the surface hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Pain jolted through his body, but he pushed it aside. He didn't have time to feel it. Above him, guards were already aiming their weapons. Then, out of nowhere, a barrage of laser fire rained down from the sky. Ethan looked up just in time to see the Vanguard swooping in, its cannons blazing. The ship's sleek, dark metal gleamed against the night sky, and its thrusters roared as it descended toward him. The side hatch opened, and Mara's voice came through the communicator. "Jump, Commander." Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran toward the edge of the rooftop and leaped just as the Vanguard pulled alongside him. His fingers grasped the metal railing, and strong hands pulled him inside. The hatch slammed shut behind him. "Welcome back," Mara said with a smirk, offering him a hand. Ethan grinned, gripping her forearm. "Took you long enough." Yeah. You're alive, aren't you?" Before Ethan could respond, the ship shook violently as the Valari defenses opened fire. "We need to move," shouted Drax, the ship's pilot. His reptilian scales shimmered under the dim lights of the cockpit as he pulled the controls. "The palace fleet is mobilizing." Ethan staggered to his feet. "Then let's not stick around." The chase begins. The Vanguard shot upward, weaving through the city's towering spires as Valari patrol ships took off in pursuit. Beams of blue energy streaked through the sky, narrowly missing the Vanguard's engines. Mara slid into the co-pilot's seat, her fingers flying over the controls. "Shields at 60%. They're trying to lock onto us." Ethan grabbed the comms. "Elira, you copy?" A moment later, the princess's voice came through. "I'm clear of the city. Where are you?" "Trying not to get shot out of the sky," Ethan replied. "We need a rendezvous point. Now." Elira hesitated. "Then there's an old Valari outpost in the Nibari Expanse. Coordinates incoming." Ethan checked the nav screen as the coordinates appeared. It was risky. The Nibari Expanse was an uncharted region, filled with asteroid fields and ion storms. If they got caught in there, they'd have no backup. But they didn't have a choice. "Punch it, Drax," Ethan ordered. The reptilian pilot grinned. "Hold on to something." The Vanguard's engines roared as it shot forward, breaking through the atmosphere and into open space. Behind them, a fleet of Valari warships was already in pursuit. The battle in space. The chase was relentless. The Valari ships were faster, their pilots trained for high-speed engagements. The Vanguard had more firepower, but if they got surrounded, they wouldn't last long. "We've got incoming torpedoes," Mara shouted. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Countermeasures, now." The ship's defense systems activated, launching a barrage of flares and decoys. Several torpedoes detonated prematurely, but one slammed into the rear shields, causing the entire ship to lurch. "Shields at 30%. Drax growled. "We won't make it at this rate." Ethan's mind raced. They needed to level the playing field. "The asteroid field," he said suddenly. Mara frowned. "Are you insane?" "Probably," Ethan admitted. "But those ships are bigger than us. If we can weave through the asteroids, we might lose them." Drax let out a deep chuckle. "I like this plan." He yanked the controls, and the Vanguard veered sharply toward the Nibari asteroid field. Into the storm. The moment they entered the asteroid belt, everything became chaos. Massive rocks spun through space, colliding and breaking apart into deadly fragments. The Vanguard twisted and turned, narrowly dodging each incoming chunk of debris. The Valari ships weren't so lucky. 2 enemy fighters slammed into asteroids, exploding into bright fireballs. Yes, Mara cheered. But the celebration didn't last long. One of the Valari battleships was still on their tail, and it was powering up its main cannon. "They're going to fire," Drax warned. Ethan clenched his fists. "Not if we take them down first." He turned to Mara. "Divert all power to the main guns. Target their engines." Mara hesitated for only a second, then nodded. "Done." The Vanguard's cannons glowed red-hot as they charged. Ethan took a deep breath. Fire. A massive energy blast shot through the asteroid field, slamming into the enemy battleship's engines. The explosion ripped through its hull, sending the massive warship spinning out of control. The remaining Valari ships hesitated. Ethan smirked. "Yeah, that's what I thought." The Vanguard shot forward, disappearing into the depths of the asteroid field. They were safe, for now. But Ethan knew this was far from over. The Valari Dominion had turned against them. And somewhere in the galaxy, the HFY were still coming. The real war was just beginning. The Vanguard cut through the darkness of space, slipping deeper into the Nibari expanse. Asteroids drifted lazily, glowing faintly under the distant light of a dying star. The ship's engines hummed softly, the only sound in the eerie silence. Ethan Graves leaned against the co-pilot's chair, exhaling. That was too close. Mara Voss smirked from the pilot's seat. "You love the thrill. Admit it." Ethan rolled his eyes. "I prefer not getting shot at, actually." From the comms panel, Princess Alira's voice crackled through. "I see you on my scanners. Adjust your course to 047 Mark 9. The outpost is just ahead." Ethan straightened. "You sure this place is safe?" Alira hesitated. "It's abandoned. No one has used it in decades, but it has supplies, and more importantly, no tracking beacons. The Valari won't find us here." Mara adjusted the ship's heading. "Well, let's hope you're right, Princess, because if they do find us, we're outnumbered." Ahead, a massive asteroid came into view. At first, it seemed like just another floating rock in space, but as they drew closer, the shape of a hidden structure became clear. The Nibari outpost was built into the asteroid itself, a fortress of dark metal, hidden in the shadows. Ethan crossed his arms. "Looks cozy." Drax, their reptilian pilot, let out a low chuckle. "Better than a Valari prison cell." The ship glided toward the docking bay, its automated systems still operational. As the Vanguard landed, the outpost's doors creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hangar. "Welcome to our new home," Alira said over the comms. Ethan sighed. "Let's hope it stays that way." The secrets of the outpost. The team stepped off the ship, weapons drawn. The air was stale, but still breathable. Alira and her small group of Valari rebels were already inside, waiting. "This place gives me the creeps," Mara muttered, scanning the walls. "How long has it been abandoned?" Alira pressed a few buttons on a nearby console, activating the base's systems. Old lights flickered to life, casting eerie shadows across the metal walls. "Almost a century," she answered. "This was once a listening post during the war between my ancestors and the HFY. It was decommissioned when the fighting ended." Drax tapped a clawed finger against a nearby control panel. "Still got power. That's a good sign." Ethan studied the maps appearing on the screen. "Any weapons?" "Supplies." Alira nodded. "There should be a storage room deeper inside. And if we're lucky, we might find something useful in the command center." "Then let's move," Ethan ordered. "We need to be ready for anything." A disturbing discovery. The deeper they went into the outpost, the colder the air became. The walls were lined with ancient Valari technology, most of it long dead. Ethan's instincts screamed that something was off. Mara must have felt it too. "I don't like this," she muttered. "Feels too quiet." Then they found the doors to the command center. Alara tried the controls, but the panel flickered red. "It's locked," she said, frowning. Ethan cracked his knuckles. "Guess we do this the old-fashioned way." He stepped back and kicked the door with all his strength. The metal creaked but didn't give. Drax joined in, using his brute strength. After a few more tries, the doors slammed open, revealing something none of them expected. Inside the command center, a body lay slumped over a console. Ethan froze. "What the?" Alara rushed forward, kneeling beside the corpse. The body was Valari, its clothes tattered, its skin pale, but it wasn't old. Mara whispered, "This isn't a century-old body. This is fresh." Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. Someone was here before us. And not long ago. Drax scanned the console, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "Commander, you're gonna want to see this." Ethan turned toward the screens. The old system had recorded a final transmission before shutting down. Alara pressed a button, and the message began to play. A distorted voice echoed through the room. "This is Outpost Theta. We have been discovered. They are coming. The HFY. They. Static. Then, a chilling whisper. They are already here." The screen flickered and died. For a long moment, no one spoke. Ethan's heart pounded. The HFY had been here. And if that message was right, they still were. They are not alone. Alara swallowed hard. "This changes everything." Ethan checked his weapon. "We need to sweep this place. Now." Mara moved to the door, scanning the hall. If the HFY were here, where did they go? Drax sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring. "I smell something. Something. Wrong." Before Ethan could respond, a sound echoed through the hall. A deep, inhuman clicking noise. It came from the shadows. Mara's hands tightened around her blaster. "Tell me it was just the ventilation system." Alara shook her head slowly. "No, that was something else." Then they saw it. A figure, tall, skeletal, with glowing violet eyes, stepped into the doorway. Its blackened exoskeleton shimmered under the flickering lights, its elongated fingers twitching. Ethan's blood ran cold. "HFY," he whispered. The creature tilted its head, studying them. Then it let out a low guttural hiss. And from the darkness behind it, more eyes began to glow. The HFY weren't gone. They were waiting. And now, the hunt had begun. Ethan tightened his grip on his blaster as the HFY stepped forward. Its glowing violet eyes locked onto him, unblinking. The creature's twisted, skeletal form looked like it had been sculpted for only one purpose: to hunt. Mara took a step back, whispering, "Tell me we're not trapped in here with those things." Alira's voice was tight with fear. "I think they were waiting for us." The HFY hissed, its elongated fingers twitching, ready to strike. And then more eyes appeared in the shadows behind it. Dozens. Ethan didn't wait. "Run," he shouted. The team turned and sprinted down the dark hallway as the HFY shrieked and launched after them. Blaster fire lit up the corridor as Mara and Drax fired over their shoulders. The shots slammed into the HFY, but instead of dropping, the creatures moved faster, dodging with unnatural speed. "They're too fast," Mara cursed. Ethan spotted an open door ahead. "In here." They rushed inside just as Alara slammed the controls, sealing the door behind them. For a moment, only silence. Then, boom, the HFY slammed against the door, shrieking. Their claws scraped against the metal, trying to tear through. Ethan's breath was heavy. Okay, not ideal. Drax, his scales shimmering under the flickering light, exhaled sharply. "We need a way out. Fast." Mara scanned the room. "Where the hell are we?" Alara checked the terminal. "Looks like an old weapons vault." Ethan's eyes widened. Please tell me there's something in here we can use. Alira pressed a few buttons, and lights flickered on, revealing racks of ancient Valori weapons. Mara grinned. Now we're talking. But outside, the HFY weren't stopping. The door began to bend inward under their relentless assault. Ethan grabbed a plasma rifle from the rack and tossed weapons to the others. We make a stand here. If they break through, we hit them with everything we've got. Mara checked her blaster. I was hoping for an easier plan. Drax flexed his claws. Fighting is easier than running. Alira took a deep breath. Then we fight. The metal door groaned, barely holding against the Scifi's relentless attack. Then, with a deafening screech, the door exploded inward. The battle in the vault. The Scifi poured in, their claws flashing. Ethan fired first, his plasma rifle roaring to life. The blue energy blasts slammed into the creatures, making them screech. Mara and Drax unleashed a storm of firepower, cutting down the first wave. But more came, crawling over the bodies of the fallen. They just keep coming, Mara yelled. Alira, using an ancient Valori energy bow, fired precise shots, each arrow striking true. One of the Scifi lunged at Ethan. He barely dodged as the creature's claws slashed across his chest armor, leaving deep scars. He spun, ramming his rifle into the Scifi's skull, then fired point-blank. The alien collapsed, its body smoldering. Drax tackled another, his massive strength overpowering it. His claws ripped through the creature's carapace, but the Scifi retaliated, biting into his shoulder. Drax roared in pain, but Mara blasted the creature off him. We can't hold them forever, she shouted. Alira's eyes darted to the far side of the room. There, emergency tunnel. Ethan followed her gaze. A hatch built into the floor. It leads to the lower levels, Alira explained. Ethan blasted another Scifi and yelled, "Move, now." Mara and Drax rushed to the hatch, covering Alira as she worked the controls. But before she could open it, a Scifi pounced on her, knocking her down. Alira. Ethan rushed forward, tackling the creature off her. They rolled across the floor, struggling. The Scifi's fangs snapped inches from his face. Its claws wrapped around his throat. Ethan grabbed a fallen plasma knife and jammed it into the creature's skull. The blade burned through its exoskeleton, and the Scifi screeched before collapsing. Breathing heavily, Ethan pulled Alira up. You okay? She nodded, shaken but alive. The hatch opened with a hiss. Mara shouted, "Go, go, go." One by one, they jumped into the tunnel. Ethan was last, slamming the hatch shut just as the remaining Scifi lunged at them. They fell into darkness. The truth below. They landed hard in an underground chamber. Dim emergency lights flickered, revealing a massive control center. Alira groaned, rubbing her shoulder. Where are we? Ethan stood, looking around. His gaze fell on a massive terminal in the center of the room. It was still active. Mara limped to it, wiping blood from her brow. This system, it's still connected to something. Alira approached the controls, pressing a few buttons. A hologram flickered to life. The room went silent. On the screen, a terrifying image appeared. Hundreds of Scifi ships. A fleet. An invasion force. Ethan's breath caught. They're not just hunting us. Alira's hands clenched into fists. They're preparing for war. Drax growled. Against who? Alira turned to them, her face pale. Against the entire galaxy. Silence fell over the group as the reality sank in. The Scifi weren't just a threat to them. They were a threat to everyone. And if they didn't stop them, no one would. Ethan stared at the holographic display of the Scifi fleet with a sinking feeling in his chest. Hundreds of warships, each one designed for destruction, hovered in formation. They weren't just preparing an attack. They were launching a full-scale invasion. Mara clenched her fists. This isn't just about us anymore, If they unleash that fleet, the entire galaxy is doomed. Drax let out a low growl. Then we stop them here. Ethan exhaled, steadying himself. We don't have much time. Elire, can you access this system? Maybe send a warning to the Valari High Council. Elira's fingers flew across the ancient console. I'll try. But this tech is centuries old. It's barely holding together. Mera paced. Even if we send a warning, it won't be enough. No fleet is ready to fight something like this. Ethan's mind raced. They needed more than a warning. They needed a way to cripple that Selfar fleet before it launched. Then, Elira gasped. Wait, I found something. They gathered around the screen as she pulled up a blueprint of the asteroid base. This outpost wasn't just a listening post, she explained. It was a last resort weapon. A failsafe. Ethan frowned. A failsafe. Elira nodded. There's a fusion core beneath this facility. If we overload it, the explosion could be powerful enough to destroy the Selfar ships before they launch. Mara's eyes widened. Are you saying we turn this place into a bomb? Elira hesitated. Yes, but Drax crossed his arms. There's always a but. Elira took a deep breath. Once the core is overloaded, we'll have 5 minutes to escape if we don't make it back to the Vanguard in time. Ethan finished the thought. We go down with the base. A heavy silence fell over them. Mera exhaled sharply. Well, I've had worse plans. Drax smirked. Let's do it. Ethan placed a hand on Elira's shoulder. You up for this? She met his gaze, determination in her eyes. For my people. For the galaxy. Ethan nodded. Then let's move. Activating the Doomsday device. The team rushed through the corridors of the ancient outpost, heading toward the reactor chamber. The ground trembled beneath them. The Exelthar were still trying to break in. As they reached the reactor core, the room glowed with pulsing energy. The massive fusion generators, two in the center, humming with power. Elira immediately moved to the control panel. I can set the core to overload, but once I do, there's no turning back. Ethan took a deep breath. Do it. Elira's fingers danced across the screen. Warning lights flashed red, and a countdown appeared. 5 minutes. Ethan turned to the others. Time to run. The escape. They sprinted back the way they came. But as they rounded a corner, the Exelthar were waiting. A dozen of them, blocking their path to the hangar. Mera cursed. Of course they show up now. Ethan raised his blaster. No time to fight. We break through. Drax roared, charging forward like a living battering ram. He slammed into the nearest Selfar, sending it crashing into the wall. Ethan and Mera opened fire, blasting a path forward. Elira used her energy bow, striking weak points in the Selfar's exoskeleton. The creatures shrieked and lashed out. One of them grabbed Ethan's arm, its claws cutting deep. He gritted his teeth and shot it in the head, pushing forward. The countdown ticked down. 3 minutes left. They fought their way toward the hangar, pushing through the swarm of enemies. Mera shouted, almost there. But just as they reached the doors, a massive Selfar warrior dropped from the ceiling. It was larger than the others, its violet eyes burning with rage. It lunged at them, its claws flashing. Ethan rolled aside just in time, but the creature slammed into Drax, sending him flying into a wall. Elira, get to the ship, Ethan shouted. We'll hold it off. Elira hesitated, then nodded and ran toward the Vanguard. The Selfar warrior charged at Mara. She fired, but the creature dodged with unnatural speed. Ethan saw only one way to stop it. He lunged forward, grabbing a detonator from his belt. Hey, ugly, he shouted. The Exelthar turned. Ethan tossed the detonator directly into its mouth. Then he dived aside as the explosion ripped through the corridor. The Selfar warrior collapsed, dead. Drax groaned, pushing himself up. That was reckless. Mera smirked. That was Ethan. Ethan grinned, wincing from his wounds. Let's get out of here. The final countdown. They rushed into the Vanguard, sealing the doors behind them. Punch it, Drax, Ethan ordered. The ship's engines roared to life, lifting off as the countdown reached 30 seconds. The hangar doors opened, and the Vanguard shot out into space. Through the viewport, they saw the Sci-Fi fleet preparing to launch. And then, boom! The asteroid erupted in a massive explosion, a blinding flash of energy tearing through space. The shockwave engulfed the Sci-Fi fleet, ripping their ships apart. One by one, the massive warships detonated. Their invasion stopped before it could begin. The Vanguard rocked from the blast, but Drax held steady, guiding them safely away. Silence filled the cabin as the flames of the explosion faded behind them. Mara let out a breath. Did we just win? Alyra, watching the wreckage, smiled softly. Yes. Ethan leaned back in his seat, exhaling. Remind me never to do that again. Drax chuckled. Until next time. Ethan grinned. Let's hope there isn't one. They had stopped the invasion. The galaxy was safe. For now.